Just a reminder for everybody who's here, if you can make sure you sign in on the sign-in sheet, that would be great.
Sorry, I was trying to get something set on here, but I'm not finding how to do it, so, oh well. I'll move on. Okay. Crystal,
Yes.
this. Wasn't it Christensen? I thought it was him that left it. Is this yours? No? Okay. Somebody left it at the last meeting. We thought for some reason it might be you. Okay. All right, well,
the podium.
yes. Keith is just running about 10 minutes late. I'm gonna put this on the, hey, whoever just was, I'm sorry, makes a comment, it's right there.
Did you get the recorder in the morning? Mary?
What?
Did you get that other recording in the morning?
No, never got it to work. I don't know what's wrong with it. Okay, so I called the meeting to order already. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance and then anybody want to offer an opening thought or prayer? I did not make arrangements ahead of time. I always forget to do that. So let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance first. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
So if no one, does anyone have an opening thought or prayer? If not, we'll move on to conflicts of interest. Anyone? Darlene? That is Darlene, right? Yes, okay.
This is for my religious tradition. It's the prayer of St. Francis, and it's a peace prayer. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardon that we are pardoned, and it is dying that we are born to eternal life.
Okay, the next section is whether or not anyone has a conflict of interest. If you remember, we discussed this at the meeting in November and December both. This number A, or under old business, number A, an ordinance for giving overpayment of compensation. We discussed the fact that every single one of us has a conflict of interest, but that according to the ULCT, we can vote on the matter because we're the deciding body, therefore we can vote on it, even though all of us have a conflict of interest. Then for myself, I have one with under new business. Hey. And I'm not sure if I have one on M. Possibly. I'd have to check with Keith and see what he recommends on M, but it's possible. And I think that's it for me. Does anybody else have any conflicts of interest? To declare?
I think we all have those.
We all need to acknowledge that we all do an A.
On A, yeah, that's what I think.
Yes, I have one on A.
I also have one on A, and no, none other.
Jean?
Same.
Paul?
I have one also on A.
Okay.
Actually, it'd be one B. Or it's a two A,
Which one?
B, isn't it two A and three A?
2A.
Or three A?
Oh, they're A's, but they're
They're all
both A's.
A's.
They're both A's.
Oh, under old business.
They're both A, the same one.
Got it, thanks.
Okay, council comments. I have not prepared any council comments for tonight. But Jay, before I move on to Jay to talk about the mosquito abatement, does any other member of town council have any council comments you want to make? Leroy? No?
No.
Missy? I was gonna ask you to report on your fire district meeting that you just came from.
Okay, and I have some other comments too, unrelated to that, some questions, but let's deal with the comments on the fire board.
Okay.
I think most of you have known that we held a truth and taxation hearing at the end of November, and then in the December meeting, we voted as a board not to impose the tax increase at all at the fire board. I voted not to increase the tax. Property taxes at that time. Then there was a later meeting that approved the budget for the end of December. And at that point, there was some procedures with 2.9 million out of the budget. Because it was being brought over from the reserves to make the budget balance. We voted no not to proceed that way because in my view, we didn't have a plan as to which fire stations were to be closed. We had to notify the public as to how we're going to provide coverage. So we have a year to try to figure that out for next year. Either resolve the shortages or and come up with other funding or start to cut the budget. This budget, this tax for this fire board meeting, both Jay was at it and I don't see Sean. Sean was also there. There's two items of interest that we talked about. One is we voted to increase the impact fees from 75% to 100%. We've been collecting only 75% for what's authorized under the impact study. We voted to increase today 100% of the impact fees that are concerned to the impact fee study. And right now, the fire district is doing a new impact fee study, so that's just going to be temporary until the new impact fee study comes out and it's approved. Leroy, this would involve you because we decided to create a finance committee to help the board and the staff deal with some budget issues. On that board would be two members of the fire board, auditor, somebody from the auditor's office, and and of course the CFO from the fire district, and then a city manager or a city treasurer. And the way that's going to rotate is from the most population down to the lowest. So you don't have to worry about it until 7 years, and that depends if you're going to run again. So Virgin City Treasurer would be a member of that committee in the second year. Now,
Year number 7?
what's that?
You said in year number 7?
And year number 7, yeah. I'm not sure we.
Now,
What's that?
that's from
Now,
present time.
Yeah, from the present time, yeah, and I suggested that we start with the most popular. And work our way down. Dan, are we gonna talk about or scheduling? I understand there was an appeal.
I didn't put that on here for us to schedule it. I need to look at,
We have 45 days to make that decision.
yeah, Lauren sent an email, with his dates that he was gonna be available when he's not available, but I don't remember what those dates were.
So,
Yeah, I chatted with Keith today, actually, and I'll talk, we're gonna talk about that a little bit later.
Later on,
Yes.
okay,
So
later on,
maybe-
apparently.
so we may need a special meeting because I don't know when our next meeting is, but we have to schedule that within 45 days.
So you're talking about a special meeting,
To set the appeal date,
oh, unless we do it tonight, okay.
unless we do it tonight. Just want to keep that on our radar.
Okay.
The other thing on our radar that we need to talk about is we promised the citizens of Desert Gardens that we were going to address some of the issues related to the LaBrie project, and we haven't set that. So we need to start thinking about when we're going to have a meeting to discuss those issues.
Okay, my recollection is that when we were talking about the issue with the LaBrie project, it had to do with the road going into Desert Gardens, correct? When we talked about it before, when we had the appeal, we talked about, yeah, we were talking about that road. I thought we were talking about 1420 West.
That was one of the issues, yeah. My suggestion was, let's go back and listen to the minutes and then make sure we set up the meeting however we're supposed to.
Okay, the only reason I was asking is because on January 24th, we had our first meeting with UDOT about the access management plan on Highway 9 going to Virgin. And I know from talking with Chris Hall at UDOT that one of the things they'll be looking at as part of that access management plan is that entrance there at the LaBrie project, at 1420 West. So that might even already be resolved,
Okay.
just like that. But we'll see what happens at that meeting on the 24th. Okay,
Fair enough.
anything else?
No, I just want to keep those two things on our radar so we don't miss them.
Okay,
Should you want me to go over the financials now or later?
I was gonna let Jay Lee talk about mosquito abatement, if you want to talk about, and then I will let you talk about. Okay. All right, Jay.
Thank you. And I just want to say, I was quite surprised down there at the meeting because the notice on the public hearing said it was 100% tax increase, but it was like 100% of something in 2015. So they were saying that where somebody was charged right now $320, it wouldn't even go up $50. So it wouldn't be, anyway, it wasn't much of an increase, actually.
It actually depends on what the facility is, but I can give you a copy of what those fees are if you'd like.
Okay, all right, anyway, back to mosquito abatement, we had our board and meeting, and our minutes are gonna be really long because we had some of the board members from Laverton and Hurricane that wanted to make sure that we were approving these budgets and not falling into some errors that the other district did. So anyway, it took a lot of time, but anyway, we approved the minutes, we did a budget amendments and proposed budget and did our public hearing on the budget and anyway, we had reports on everything, went through our revenues and everything. I mean, I was gonna give all of your copy of this, and I was hoping Sean would be here, but we did also our Board of Trustees meeting scheduled for next year, we're meeting 5 times next year, and then all of you should have gotten this little something like this at convention. Anyway, this little schedule here shows all the red spots for the ones with the highest number of mosquitoes. And all these at the top are the kinds of mosquitoes. And actually, there's Virgin down here, Fenlove Farm, and new one, that's Vanilla. Anyway, because of a water leak that was up there in the irrigation, I guess, come down and cooled up and had all kinds of larvae in it. So anyway, and there's only been 2 in Halfway Wash in St. George. There was 1 positive SLE food. That's the anyway, Sean is really good at this, but he wasn't here, so I have to. And that was the only one of the really bad mosquitoes that they had in the whole county. And it's really amazing what they're doing. We approved the purchase of a new truck, 2023 Ranger XL Super Cab. And they're, instead of trading them out, they're hiring new people, so they need to just pass that truck. That the new one that they just got a year ago, they're passing that down. And anyway, approved their chemicals for the following year, anyway. So,
Thank you,
okay.
Jake.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, Leroy.
We're at the 6-month anniversary of our budget. Our fiscal year is from June 30th through July. And so we should be at 50% of our income, for our budgeted income, and we're at 66.18%. And then on expenses, again, we should be at 50% of budget, we're at 38.83. And this is mainly due to, we budgeted to put about $200,000 in reserve this year. And so we're on schedule to do that after the first of the month. And the reason we're putting it in reserve is the infrastructure in Virgin needs to be replaced. And we can't get a grant to do that without showing we have the ability to service the portion of the grant that becomes a loan.
Okay, I had a couple of things I wanted to ask you, Leroy.
Okay.
So one of these questions I can just ask you later, but on the second page, the one where you have you have created your own report. This one that talks about the breakdown of the utility funds year compared budget.
Which page are you
This one.
Yeah, that's the income and expense for the utility fund, which is our water fund,
Well, I wanted,
and it's separated into a separate financial statement.
yes, well, what I wanted to ask you, where we have includes 1,200,000 for the new water tank. Since that went away, that money went away from the state because we were so, if I understand, if I'm wrong, tell me, but I thought this is the money we were getting from the state to, that they had previously given us, and then everything got delayed because the BLM was doing, we had to get that easement from the BLM.
To be able to get a grant from the state, we have to show that it's in our budget. And at the time we did the budget, we didn't know how much a new water tank would cost. So we just put down what it cost approximately 6 years ago when we got the grant that we had to give up.
Okay, so this is just based on that.
Right.
Okay,
And so hopefully, the engineer He has not told me what he feels that the new tank will cost
Okay,
and how much he's applied.
okay,
And so we can adjust that once we have those figures.
okay, that's what was concerning me is that's probably, that figure is out. Okay,
And then the other thing is, is that during the month, we operated at a loss. And that because a number of meters out to contractors, and those meters have not been returned so that we can charge them for that. But just for the public's information, we are showing a year-to-date profit or reserve, whatever you want to call it, about $81,700.
okay, if no one else on the council has any comments, then we'll move on to item D, which is the consent agenda. And I've already reviewed the minutes from the December 19th town council meeting, made all my changes and gave them to Crystal. Does anybody else have any changes to the minute?
We're talking, you got minutes for 19.
Yes.
And then the others, grammatical or spelling.
Okay, if you would just mark those and give them to Crystal.
I've already given mine.
All right. Misty, Leroy, anything about minutes?
No, I don't have any.
Okay, all right. So lastly, I had resolutions, 2 resolutions prepared, setting the meetings for this for 2023 for the town council and the planning commission. If there's no objection to any of the language in those 2 resolutions, then I will have a motion to approve the consent agenda with those, with the 3 items that are on here: minutes, checks and invoices, and the resolution for meetings.
I move for approval of the consent agenda.
A second.
I think I'll take this one by one. I say aye. Misty? Aye. Leroy?
Aye.
Jean?
Aye.
Paul?
Aye.
All right, open forum.
Who seconded, sorry?
It was
Leroy.
Leroy. Nobody has anything to say on open forum? I'm stuck. In this town.
So to start with, I don't come up here lightly. I'm just addressing what I feel are some uncomfortable topics. Before I get into that, because I don't know if we'll get down to the water item.
Okay.
I just would like to follow up. There was discussion of re-meeting, a group of you re-meeting with the water district to find out what the cost versus the benefits to us have been. I'm assuming there would be a discussion on yourself as well. And there was to be a projected impact to residents as well as perhaps developers. Has any of that, hasn't had a chance to do any of that?
Not that I'm aware of. Doesn't mean it didn't happen, it's just not that
Yeah.
I am aware
So my question is why a resolution or why an ordinance? Because this is a big decision. And I think that was clearly expressed last time. I also have a question. I recall in the last meeting that a new sewage system, the state-of-the-art one, was being delivered sometime soon for the White Bison development. But a question came to my mind that I would like some input on, and that is, there are currently units there. How are they being serviced for sewer? And then this next is dear to my heart. Because I sincerely feel my 14th Amendment rights to due process has been violated by our current utilization of CUP ones and the lack of timely notification. And I don't care if there's a good reason or a bad reason. I'm not calling anyone a villain. But I don't even have a chance. And that is fundamentally an American right. I feel, and I'm asking for you to consider a revisit to our CUP process so that there's a clear delineation of what qualifies for level 1 and level 2. That things are posted in a timely manner. I think the whole code needs to be rewritten. Because what happens if there are not clear procedures that are followed with fidelity is it creates animosity where we don't need any, particularly between residents and developers. Because when things are not clear, confusion rushes in, and then rumors start, and rights are violated. And that's my main mistake.
Anyone else?
Tingling. Couple of, actually just passing on some information mostly, but my thoughts on some things. I written it down so I can hurry to get this over with. A couple of months ago, in the town newsletter, the mayor wrote about the need to conserve water and how good a job the residents of Desert Gardens did on cleaning up the landscape in front of the wall next to the highway, which they did a good job. It really looked good. And we talked about how we need to conserve water, the those people who are using it and everything, but are you aware that all those trees and cactus are watered with culinary water, with no water meter over there that I know of? And I don't really think it's right that all the rest of the town should have to pay for something that should be charged to the homeowners at Desert Gardens or to the homeowners association. Okay. Now, the rest of the story on the old water treatment plant, you talked a little bit about that, you know what happened to it and everything. So anyway, when the Conservancy District came and we actually, 2 times before that, we were on a moratorium, no homes built. And that happened once we were using the water out of the hill, and then again. So anyway, the town went in and built their own water treatment plant.
I'm sorry, who did?
Beg your pardon?
What did you say? Repeat what
The town,
the town did. Okay.
the town of Vernon went in and built their own water treatment system. And that is where the up the old Log Road, where the fire station is now, that was our water treatment plant. And when the Water Conservancy District took over the system, we had to deed that water treatment plant over to the Water Conservancy District. And that was one of the things. So anyway, when I was mayor, I got thinking we need a fire station. So I called Ron Thompson and I says, hey, the town owns that pond, settling pond up there, you know, where the Colab Road and the new one meet. And would you consider trading the old treatment plant for that? You know, just make a trade. He says, sure, you do the paperwork. Well, I got researching it and found out that Joy Hitterlight never deeded it over to the Water Conservancy District. We still own it.
You're talking about fire station?
So I called Ron back and said, hey, we don't have to worry about it. But then I said, but I know what the deal was, so we will go ahead and deed you the settling pond. So we got that back and we took all the water treatment plant stuff out and we took in, I guess, anyway, I was just thinking it came up because I'd heard that the water concern or
Fire district.
the fire district wouldn't let the town use one of those lakes up there to work on their equipment. So I get checking, and they don't own that, the town still owns that. But I guess we have a lease agreement, which I don't know anything about, something that Bruce did. Anyway, that's that story now. That brings me into the next one. Water Conservancy District contract. I guess I could wait till the end of the meeting, but we probably will not make it that far because it's the very last item. So I'm going to do that in my comments, if that's okay. Just, I'm going to take a minute.
Okay.
Anyway, just think about it. There's 6,000 homes already approved by Tocqueville. There are 12,000 homes already approved by Hurricane, plus thousands in St. George. We have motels, vacation rentals, and everything going in Hurricane. Do you really think we would get our 300 to 400 hookups back before the whole county is shut down? Won't happen. Red flags should always go up when someone says, you need to act now, do it now before it's too late. Do you know what will happen when some entity has a monopoly on everything, let alone water, a necessity? You have to have water to exist. I think the council should consider that just letting the present contract stay as is. When the contracted hookups are maxed out, then there is an automatic moratorium on building permits, and nobody has to be the bad guy. Virgin has always been innovative when times get hard by working together, coming up with beneficial solutions for our small community. Shucks, we even built our own water treatment plant when we needed it. When the time comes, we can do it again, but not if we sign into the pooling agreement. We would be giving up that right, because the pooling agreement states that the community can never go after water on their own. They would have to buy it from the Water Conservancy District. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Okay, if there's no one else that has anything to say in open forum, then we will move on to this public hearing. This is a public hearing on the ordinance for giving overpayment of compensation. I was supposed to schedule a public hearing in December, the December meeting, and I forgot to do that and just set it for a vote. And I was reminded, so we continued it on to this month. So now we'll be having our public hearing on this issue. And then after that, we will have our vote. So I need a motion.
Motion to close the public meeting and open the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so does anyone in the public have a comment on this? Anything different from what was said when we had our first public hearing in November? Okay. I guess I'll take another motion.
Motion to close the public hearing and we open the public meeting.
Do I have a second? If not, I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. I have accept public comment written down here on the agenda underneath this item A, which obviously we don't need to do since we just had it open for public comment. So any further discussion among the town council members? Paul, you look like you have something you want to say.
Since I'm the one that caused this ordinance to be brought forward indirectly, by bringing the light that we have not enacted our salary increases via ordinances. I do want to address a couple of issues. I'm probably the only council member that's actually been through a recovery process. My prior decision up in Montana, we had some senior administrative staff receive overpayment. different than what's here, I admit, completely different in the sense it was a computer error, we got paid so many months that we weren't entitled to, and it came down. Do we have to sue the individuals or do we collect it back? We just couldn't deduct it from the wages. All the senior officials, of course, were still employed and they voluntarily entered into an agreement to pay back the overpayment. And that was done over a period of time with no interest. I pretty much know how this vote's probably going to go, so we won't ever reach that. But let's say this ordinance didn't pass and we were going to collect, then I would say whatever we do, we have to come up with a system to make it fair to the people that wanted to pay it back over time with no interest. I don't think that's the way the vote's going to go today. Other thing I wanted to address was, and I know there's nobody here, we've had a lot of testimony over the last 3 months. And Pat Galvez is out of town, but he did give a passionate speech where he stood up here and pointed to each of us as to how John Ely decision was that we have to follow the law of your decision on the LaBrie project. I think there's a difference between what we did with LaBrie and our decision tonight. And I'm sure that members, if they're listening out there, Pat, when he listens to this, will hear this, I will visit with Pat about that difference at some point. But the difference with LaBrie, we were dealing with a quasi-judicial proceeding where there was some due process implications. We had a structure where certain findings we had to make. In other words, in that particular case, John did not file his appeal within the 15 days. We followed the law. We were kind of bound by doing that based on the facts. This is different. This is a legislative decision, unlike the previous Eli decision. This is a legislative decision. We each have broad discretion to vote the way we want based on what we feel is the best interest to the town. So looking at this, we've already mentioned that some of the reasons you pass this is because of the cost of collecting. If you end up having to collect, could outpace the amount you would collect. It depends on the contested, it depends on the particular defense attorney, but then again, on the other side, it depends if somebody wants to hire an attorney to do that. The other reason you would pass this ordinance is because of the chilling effect that it would have on people serving in the future. And I think that's a very legitimate basis, especially in a small town like this, where there's only 700 to 1,000 people in the next 2 years that would possibly be able to serve. It's different than a town of 40,000. So finding 10 volunteers in a town of 1,000 versus a city of 45, 50,000 is a lot different. So that's the valid factor. Going the other way, I think Pat was making a point that we wanted accountability on our officials, and that's a valid reason to vote against it. I take serious about public funds. I've lost some sleepless nights over which way I was going to go. I have switched back and forth. I vacillated between which way I was going to go. I'm going to end up voting no against this resolution. I know this resolution has been passed, but the reason I'm going to vote no is because one of the things I discovered serving on the fire board was we had a truth and taxation hearing that I think if we did not have that hearing, the board would have voted an increase in tax, but the public came out and voted. And based on that, the majority of the board listened and said, we're not going to have a tax increase. So the fact that the legislature said you have to do it through a salary ordinance, and you have to notify the public, there was a reason to involve the public, to notify the public that this was happening, and have them come to speak if they so desire. We don't know what that outcome would have been. So keeping with my election platform of transparency, I'm going to be voting no on this. But to let you know, if it's a valid reason to vote the other way, that's up to each of the council members here.
Okay. Any other council member have comments on this? Okay, if not, motion,
Make a motion to approve ordinance number 2022-12.
we're actually gonna change the number to be, because we're voting on it this year, we're gonna change it to 2023 dash whatever number is next time. Okay?
Make a motion to approve ordinance number 2023-12 is next one.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I vote yes. Paul,
No,
Jean,
Yes.
Leroy,
Yes.
Misty.
Yes.
All right. The vote is 4-1 and the motion passes. So this ordinance for giving overpayment of compensation to Virgin's elected and appointed officers for the 4-year period from July 2018 to June 2022. Goodness, due to failure to amend compensation by ordinance and hold a properly noticed public hearing has passed. All right. So. Next item. Oh, no. I made a change. I added something to the ordinance just a date, because we had 2 public hearings. This, I'll just go back and notice that this ordinance that we just had, public hearing, it indicated the public hearing was held on November 16th, 2022. And we're gonna add January 17th, 2023, because we had a public hearing today. All right, so the next item is item B. About enacting a temporary land use regulation to prohibit new development for 6 months. So. Is this next up in line? So there's. Okay. Just want to make sure. So. We discussed this a little bit at the special meeting. That this was because of water. I guess really truly B and O kind of go together. The topic of water with what's going on with the Water Conservancy District at the same time, because that's the whole reason for this. In my mind, the reason for this land use regulation was water. Let's see here, we have somewhere the ordinance that you proposed, so do you want to talk about that, please?
Yeah, I think on the main screen. Mayor, you had asked me to look at the versions of the moratorium ordinance that was reviewed in the special meeting earlier this month, and I've taken a look at it, made some suggested changes that the council desires to do this. I felt like there was 2 grounds that could be considered compelling, countervailing reasons for doing so. The recitals are pretty specific, and if you want me to, I can. Part of it will be a report back to the resolution that was requested of me to look into the number of connections that we have. So in it, it says, to start, whereas Lincoln Town is a Utah Municipal Corporation, political subdivision of the state of Utah, holds delegated police powers under the Utah Constitution to act as land use authority within its municipal boundaries, with the power to regulate those items set forth in 10(9)(a)(102). Goes on to say the town by through its legislative body, the Virgin Town Council, known as the town council, is required to enact all necessary land use regulations as required by Utah Code 10(9)(a)(501). And there's a list of things that we have to have in our land use ordinances. Then it goes on to say that in 10(9)(a)(504), that the town council as legislative body has the ability to enact temporary land use ordinances on making the finding of compelling and countervailing public interest. And that the temporary land use regulation can prohibit the erection, construction, reconstruction, alteration, and of any building or structure. And then it goes into discuss culinary water service, how it's provided within the town. It discusses the current agreement that we have with the Conservancy District. It refers to it as the 1997 water supply agreement. Since entering into that agreement, we have not, as a town, actively pursued the development of new water resources, nor have we chosen to join the Conservancy District's regional water supply agreement, which is often referred to as the pooling agreement. We have seen some accelerated growth within the town. According to Washington County records, and I needed to correct, I have 578. It's actually 581, 3 connections off that 581 connections of the 1,000 total connections or equivalent residential connections under that agreement have been utilized. And that would be utilized based on when the building permit is pulled for the construction of a building or structure that would house a dwelling with some sort of commercial use. I will indicate that at the time that the 1997 water supply agreement was entered into, there was 137 connections or equivalent residential connections to the town's existing water system, meaning that there's been an increase of 441 connections over the last 25 years, 17.6 connections per year. Does indicate that on the top of page 2 of the ordinance that recently the town has received an increased number of land use applications for residential subdivisions, commercial site plans, and conditional use permits, and has administered said applications through the process to varying stages of approval. And then we indicate that screen keeps moving around. Okay, because of the majority of the recent land use applications received by the town have been for approval of non-traditional residential developments and uses, the town has understood exactly how many future equivalent residential connections or ERCs the town has committed to provide to developments which are already in the land use approval process. Due to lack of clarity as to what constitutes an equivalent residential connection or an ERC, the town has commenced discussions and negotiations with the district to set forth and define ERC conversion denominators for different types of uses such as seasonal, recreational, and transient uses under the 1997 agreement. We don't currently know. And that's a point that we have to, and we're in the process of trying to get clarity and negotiate with the district. But notwithstanding, it says this lack of clarity, the town believes that there is somewhere between 150 to 200 or equivalent residential connections that have been committed to by the town. It says, since entering the 1997 water supply agreement, the town has actively or has not actively pursued new water resources. But due to this accelerated growth and anticipated consumption of connections to the town water system, town has also began discussions with the district regarding the town possibly becoming a party to the pooling agreement, which would give the town the ability to purchase water wholesale for the district beyond the annual 1,000 acre foot cap contained in the water supply agreement. Part of the discussions with the district parties have discussed the possibility of the town surrendering its remaining unused connections contemplated under the 97 water supply agreement as consideration for the town's late joinder as a part of the pooling agreement or in exchange for remuneration that can be used to offset increased user rates or charges that would need to be paid under the pooling agreement. Then it goes on, that's the water side of it, the power side of it on January 12th, 2023. So I don't know, he has the ability to pull up the letter. The town was informed by a letter from Rocky Mountain Power that its electrical infrastructure within the town is currently insufficient to supply connections to some new residential and commercial developments, depending on the electrical load needed, and that it was taking steps to correct the situation, including construction of a substation near Pocketville Road, which would allow electrical power to be transmitted through underground lines without the need for step-down transformers. Okay, whereas in the same letter, Rocky Mountain Power estimates that due to current material availability of necessary substation will likely not be in service until early 2025. Based on the aforementioned recitals, County Council finds that the continued receipt of land use application for approval of commercial non-traditional residential developments, residential subdivisions, zone changes, or permits for land uses potentially permitting higher impact on the town's current water supply and electrical system then the city of Rocky Mountain Power has the ability to provide is not in the best interest of the town, its residents, and landowners, and in conflict with public health, safety, and general welfare. And then it makes another finding based upon the aforementioned recitals. Town Council also finds that the city of Rocky Mountain Power has the capacity to provide water and electrical service to those developments which have submitted complete applications, including the payment of necessary fees for all types of land use approvals except building permits. That's the recitals. That's pretty clear, it lays it out. The first under the in the actual body of the ordinance itself, it says that it makes the same findings of compelling and countervailing public interest, that meaning water and power insufficiencies or growing insufficiencies. And what it does in paragraph 2, it imposes an immediate temporary land use regulation, and I refer to it as a limited moratorium. It's hereby adopted an immediate temporary land use regulation pursuant to Code 98504 regarding development as follows. And basically it says in A, that Hulu is hereby temporarily amended suspended to prohibit the receipt, processing, approval of any application for a new commercial site plan or traditional or non-traditional residential subdivision, conditional use permits or zone changes. That's the limited moratorium. The limited moratorium applies to land use applications set forth in subsection 2A above, where the complete application, including the payment of necessary fees, has been submitted prior to the date and time this ordinance is enacted. In said instance, the land use application shall be received and processed. So anything that is in the pipeline. C, the limited moratorium does not include the prohibition against the receipt, processing, and approval of building permits for structures or dwellings within an existing approved commercial development or residential subdivision, or one that is began through the approval process prior to the date and time of this ordinance is enacted. And D, the limited moratorium shall be effective for a period of time not exceeding 6 months from the date of enactment. And then there is. I've lost. it. Very sorry. Okay. Yeah. It says this limited memorandum may be rescinded. Or amended prior to the end of the 6-month period upon finding by the town council adopted by ordinance that would be in the best interest of the town to do so. So that's basically the ordinance. And that's what I was instructed to put together that as a proposed form ordinance. And I tried to do it as best as I can if it was to be adopted, that it would be defensible.
Would it be possible to show section 2 one more time? That was kind of the meat of it.
Yeah, the minute it's in here.
That's right.
Yes, thank you.
Doesn't make any difference, yeah. The nurse says that Alan's never pursued any water,
I can't hear what you asked.
Oh, in that, when he was reading, it says in there that the town has never pursued any new water sources. We made that agreement, and that is basically is not true. The reason that we bought that and get it up on Polk is to put up on a 200-gallon of water, right, that we have up the cold, up the dry water. So we have pursued that. That statement in there is not totally correct.
I'd be happy to,
Pardon?
I'd be happy to believe that.
Well-
And Jay's knowledge of the history of the last couple of decades far exceeds my knowledge.
Yeah, but this,
So
this,
I can appreciate that.
this section where we're talking about, it right now says has actively pursued, and you had mentioned that the word not was not in there, but right now it says that the town has actively pursued.
Oh,
Okay, but what we had said,
Yeah,
he was reading this, is that we were gonna insert the word.
My typo makes it read.
Exactly.
More accurate.
yeah, okay.
Well, there you go. But, yeah, Matt, did you have a question about?
Yeah, under A, we're looking for clarification in terms of, well, for our particular resort, we're looking to get the building permit, site plans approval, what's already been authorized under a conditional use permit. The way A is reading is that site plan application would be barred. Even though we're hearing, hey, this is an existing development, we see some overlap in terms of what would be permitted in that particular scenario.
And you said some, well, I can see a commercial site plan in connection with a commercial building and building structure. I would look at that more as being taken to be hand in hand with a building permit for what you're trying to do, but I get your point. How that would, yeah, I can see how that may be problematic with that language.
Yeah, so essentially we'd be looking to omit that new commercial site plan, because where those site plan applications were part of the building permit application, you'd be cutting out a material part to get the building permit.
We're talking about the one that we just talked about on the 5th of January, is that the one you're talking about?
It could be for any of the conditional use permits we have on the project.
Oh,
So
okay,
you're saying elimination of new commercial site plan.
Yeah, that language gives us some heartburn.
And I would be happy to, I would even under 2A say that it just said for a subdivision, because it could be a commercial subdivision. Or residential and non-traditional residential subdivision. I think that's the intent, is to try to sweep. Because utilization of a commercial site plan can be used in several different ways.
okay, I wanna make sure I understand, so your concern is the words site plan, commercial site plan?
Correct.
Okay,
Their commercial site plan when approved, you can include in it, it looks just like a Mylar for residential subdivision. dedications in it, it can be recorded like that, and so in some ways it is akin to a subdivision. But also part of your construction drawings and that you submit for a building permit for a commercial project as a site plan. Identifying the improvements on the site, like parking lot areas, lighting and things like that, and access. I'm simply trying to say that building permits can go forward in existing approved subdivisions and developments.
Right.
Or those that are in the process of being approved. If they are approved ultimately, what we're trying to limit is that no new subdivisions, no new commercial developments are caught in this limited memorandum of transaction. I'd be happy to come back to H, just say for the new subdivision.
That's the intent, that language, I think, is more reflective of that. The other comment is B, in terms of carving out what it doesn't apply to. Our recommendation would be where there's been existing conditional use permits issued for land, that would be expressly stated as the limited moratorium does not apply where the conditional use permits are either issued or a completed application as it's stated. So where it's an application or has been an approved conditional use permit.
Okay. Yeah, approved applications or completed application is submitted.
When we talked about doing a moratorium in, I think this was in the December meeting when the topic of moratorium first came out. Unexpectedly. It's not even on the agenda, total surprise when it came out. I know, but it got expanded. I think it was the December meeting, it could have been at the January meeting, special meeting, but I thought you had said that if we did a moratorium, that we could make exceptions here or there. Did you not say that?
That's what the intent of 2A is, to carve out some exceptions and make it a limited moratorium. I'm not saying all land use applications, because that would include building permits. And applications that are in the process.
Well, the reason I'm asking exactly what this means, when we talk about some exceptions. Because the letter from Rocky Mountain Power says that while they don't have, okay, I think you actually cover it here. What I was concerned about was if somebody comes in with a single home. That we could make an exception and let them go forward during this time, if it's a single home, or if it's a small business, I mean small. I just wondered if those situations, could we make an exception or no?
It'd be hard to draft that so that we objectively could apply it even-handedly to everyone. We are prepared
Favor
to
other people.
favor one
Okay.
over others. I just prohibited it.
Okay, all right. But as you said, if we work this thing out with the Water Conservancy District sooner rather than later, we can always just rescind this if necessary.
Yeah,
If-
and my other
steps-
point, that I think to the council too is that we are not the electrical power purveyor in
Right,
the town.
definitely about that.
Although, and I think that anybody who is a landowner or developer who has concerns over this, we have to recognize that as a city, we would hate to give approvals to move forward only to have a developer makes substantial financial investment only to be found that they're kind of stalled out because of the electrical power issue. We also recognize though, however, if it means delay, that a developer always has the right to work with Rocky Mountain Power and subsidize and pay for improvements to bring sufficient and adequate type power to their project to make it work. And so that's where we say, hey, if whether or not we don't claim to know exactly what in every location in the town where there is a a pole transformer, if there's adequate load or capacity for a project here or there, let them build a power provider that on anything that's existing, but we're not going to, recognizing that we've been told by Rocky Mountain Power in this letter very clearly that they don't think that they can provide basically all necessary power within the town until probably an online date of 2025, early 2025. That is concerning, and we need to get some better clarity from them, meet with them, and know exactly.
Well,
And if we intend to go forward with approvals after this moratorium is lifted, we better make it very dang clear to every developer that this is no guarantee on electrical service and power. I mean, that's really what.
yeah, and I think in the letter from Rocky Mountain Power, they made clear that it's a holdup in the supply chain and they can't get parts. All the parts that are necessary for the substation, that they can't get them. That's what the delay is.
I ask a point of clarification.
Real quick, if anybody's gonna talk, I need you guys to go to the
Come
microphone
up here.
and state your name, so you can be on camera. Thanks.
Jeff Lee, I had a question for you. When you said that the moratorium would be temporary on new building permits, if a subdivision was to get a short-term overlay, that's gonna be considered a zone change. Would that fall into then, even if it's in process, any home that doesn't have a building permit in there yet, would that be banned for the 6 months?
So for building permits and.
But you said earlier it had to be a completed, I'm a little concerned because it said it had to be a completed, a building permit issue. And then
Oh, no. I was saying complete big land use application, such as a zone change, a conditional use permit application, subdivision application.
Okay.
If you've already got an approved subdivision, this limited moratorium does not apply to the receiving, processing, and approval of ordinance.
okay.
In those, in an existing or one that's being approved.
And if we're worried about growth and you're worried about Rocky Mountain Power having power, wouldn't it be better to let Rocky Mountain Power dictate that growth and slow it down, saying there's no connections versus the city trying to step in and saying because they're not power, because the Rocky Mountain Power is completely separate than Virgin and your building permit system. So why not let Rocky Mountain Power slow you down? Then you don't open yourself up for litigation saying that you guys are trying to select or handpick people or homes versus other uses.
Other than the fact that we have a written letter issued by Rocky Mountain Power telling us that they don't have sufficient infrastructure to provide power service to new development in town.
Okay, because I know that they're still issuing permits as we speak.
They are on one, yeah, they are.
And so I'm just wondering why we would want to have the city saying, okay, we're done doing it when Rocky Mountain Power is still telling people we can or cannot.
We notice that we say anything that's in the pipe right now, whether or not there is actual capacity or not, we'll let it proceed forward because of the economic investment that landowners have made. But we're going to put a pause time being. We need to better understand what Rocky Mountain Power's situation is with, we don't know.
You know, in the Bulu, there is also the section in there where you talk about non-traditional energy sources, renewable energy sources, and the push for that. And as someone who's had owns a solar company, I wonder why we're not at least opening the door to say you can still do development using a renewable or energy source, which is what we should be pushing for anyways.
Love it.
Okay, thank you.
Love it.
Jared Westhoff. I'm just gonna keep comments to the Rocky Mountain Power issue, because I don't know that we're open for everything.
Jared probably knows more about.
Oh, I know, they've got their-
than any of us combined.
So we actually spent a few bucks to know that. So we paid for a system impact study with Rocky Mountain Power. I gave you a copy of that. Last meeting. And just my comment here is I think that typically in the world of development, you come and get your zoning. And you want to make sure that you have your zoning before you take the next steps. And so to pause people and say they can't do zoning or they can't push through a flat application. Like we eat these big projects and one bite at a time. And so we have, for instance, on a project, we have zoning for, say, let's just say 500 units. And Rocky Mountain Power today can service 100 units. But if we don't apply for that, somebody else might apply for it and then they can only service 50 units. Or Rocky Mountain Power can service 1,000 units, but one of our neighbors beats us to it. And now they can only do 400 units. So now our plat can only be, 200 units. So we deal with this every day. And we just deal with it as it comes. So zoning usually happens first. And then you work through your water issues and your power issues and your sewer issues. And they're like a second step. And if you get stopped, you get stopped. And that's just how it works. For a city to stop applications, then how's the problem gonna get solved? Because the city's not writing a check for that, the developers are. We wrote a $420,000 check for Rocky Mountain Power to extend three-phase power down the highway and then through Water Street. And then Rocky Mountain Power came in and made us upsize all our vaults for no purpose for what our project needs, but for what the town needs in the future, we assume. That it's gonna have to be a small swimming pool. And we're only pulling a couple wires for our project. So we've been asked to do all this added infrastructure to help solve these problems. If you stop opening applications to do zoning, how are your problems gonna be solved? We're being asked to also write a check towards the eventual substation. And the reason that Rocky Mountain Power knows they need to do all that is because we paid for the study. So it's the developers that are carrying the burden here, not the town. And if the town stops the developers from having some security of knowing what their zoning is and what it's gonna be, how are you ever gonna solve the problem? This moratorium would be counterproductive towards solving the power problem. So that's my comment limited to power. I have a few more.
I responded to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here, I struggled with whether or not moratorium, as I'm writing, whether it gets adopted or not. I was asked to write it down. What my thoughts were on it, but I struggled with whether or not zone changes should be included. However, if you look in Utah code, one of the bases for the land use authority granting a zoning amendment is that there is sufficient infrastructure to service the types of uses allowed within the zone. And I question whether or not we have some basis now, possibly from an electrical standpoint, even though we're not the electrical purveyor. In a big city like St. George City, this one, we provide the water. If we were St. George City, we provide the water, the sewer, power, everything, but we don't. And so we're now advised, or have been advised, that there's insufficient infrastructure. So I put it in there, but I'm still questioning whether that.
So let me respond to that by saying. So Rocky Mountain Power on their overall grid does have the capacity to provide power, and it's just a matter of extending it and improving it. So I would argue, say, that there's a limit, like even in our own project, the system impact fee study shows that with our phase one, that we'll be able to develop out half the project. And then there'll be a phase two of improvements required. Doesn't mean that they can't provide it, it just means we've got to walk through the steps to extend the power grid to where they can. And the nice thing for Virgin is right now you have a distribution system and a transmission system all in one. When they end up putting the substation in, they'll split the distribution and transmission system, and Virgin will have a much more robust and reliable power system. In our phase one, for everybody in Water Street in this part of town, there'll be a looping of three-phase power, and it'll make this section of town a whole lot more reliable. So I look at it and I say, like, we got a user right now that they're crazy. They want 130 megawatts of power. That's a 138 transmission line. If Eagle Mountain City told us, you know what, we're not gonna give you that zone change until you extend 138 megawatts of power. That's untenable. That doesn't work. That's 50, 60, 70 million dollars. So they gave us the zone change. We found the right user, and that user is now applied with Rocky Mountain Power, and they're extending the power when they need it, not ahead of the zoning. And so I guess my opinion is Rocky Mountain Power, while maybe at the distribution point can't service all the power needs for everything in town, there's still quite a bit that they can service, and they're actively working on putting the substation in. So we know that on our project, half of our units can be serviced today, but we gotta wait till 2025 or have a construction lineup to finish at the same time they finish the substation. So to say that there's not power today is not fully accurate. There's infrastructure that has to be finished.
And maybe I ought to have them sit down, or not sit down, but we ought to sit down and read that letter and see how it was written, because I looked at the same thing too, understanding that, and if you'll notice the way that I drafted the ordinance, when we're talking about water, it's supply. When we're talking about power, it's infrastructure, because Rocky Mountain Power, we know, has the ability to generate and provide power supplies. Their infrastructure is sufficient. And what I'm saying to you is that, that's why I felt comfortable drafting the moratorium such that saying everything in the pipeline can continue to move forward, because we know that the developer who's already made a financial investment, an economic investment, if they need to extend that utility provider's infrastructure to make it work for them, they will, and it won't stop that right now. And all we're simply trying to do is, until we have a better understanding of the power standpoint, that is one basis, not the only basis, water and preserving the ability, our current position, connection position for negotiating what may be a long-term solution to the town's water needs. They want to keep that status quo as much as possible, not commit it out.
So I'll say that I definitely appreciate, and I'll speak to the project, we appreciate this idea of a limited moratorium. Because we have put money on the line, we have put ourselves on the line, and we're counting on being able to pull building permits and to be able to get to the units that are approved. Otherwise, we wouldn't have put money on the line and made commitments for the power, the sewer, turn lanes, if we couldn't get to them. It would be a taking in our mind if we couldn't get to it. And so we appreciate this idea. On the second phase of the substation, just to speak specifically to that, I think Rocky Mountain Power in here is saying it's about 1.2 million. That they're expecting a contribution from us and or other developers to that substation and that infrastructure.
Just the developers in Virgin?
Yes.
Okay, the
Just the
1.2
develop-
million you're talking about?
Yeah, so I guess kind of the reason I'm speaking to, it'd be really nice if applications could go forward, is we don't want to write that full check. We would like other developers to be able to work on their project and participate in that check with us. And if they're stymied from their applications, now that burden falls back to us when it's not really our full burden that needs it, other people need it. So it's tough pioneering, I get it. We get the
How
business.
about pioneering agreement with Rocky Mountain Power? Will they do it? I've never approached Rocky Mountain Power.
So I'm gonna be way politically incorrect. But the only thing worse than dealing with a government entity is dealing with a government sanctioned monopoly. And as good as Rocky Mountain Power is, when we try to talk about pioneering agreements, they're not as open to them, or it's not part of their process. They're this huge gorilla. It's not like a conversation with Ash Creek. Ash Creek, you can sit down and discuss the principle, you can do it, but Rocky Mountain Power is Pacific Core, and they're crossing states, and they're not exactly, they don't exactly like the way our impact fee laws are written.
Your point is well taken. I get that. I don't know. I can answer response to that.
So I guess it's driving my overall point that I don't think there's an emergency that requires a moratorium, because I think that the process works its way out as development happens, because developers hit these roadblocks and they go, what do I gotta do? And Rocky Mountain Power says, do this study and write us a big
Try to check the report.
And that's what that's what we do.
But unless somebody does that, does the study and writes the check, then there's not the power.
Yeah, and the only reason we're willing to do it is if we know we have our zoning and we know we have the units. So we can get there. Otherwise, how do we put ourselves on the line?
Okay.
Because
We've seen free market principles will drive, it'll essentially be a private moratorium.
I'm out of Smith.
I was just gonna say, this all came up because of this one subdivision that, we got approved, and they came in and said, we just got the last of the power that Rocky Mountain Power has for the town. And I went to them to say, wait a minute, this is what I heard, is this true? And they're like, yeah. And so that's.
Like here, it's not lasting power. They can generate, they got some big coal fire plants.
They get perversion.
They can put power into the grid, whether they can get that grid extended to certain places within. Versions.
But even where they have those, the poles with the step down transformers there, what they have told me is there are no more transformers available. If they need to put one up, there's not one. And that if one blows, they don't have a transformer to replace it.
So
That's what they told me.
it's true. I mean, we've been waiting for transformers, and we're gonna be in the March before we get them, and we ordered them back at the end of the summer. So that's just what we deal with. But we still need the surety of knowing that we can pull building permits to be able to write those checks. And be able to make the order, because the transformer is not gonna come unless we can make the order.
Sounds like a catch-22.
And it's not a fun spot for us.
Voting poll, I have a question. This cost for this study, when do you need to pay that money?
We're okay.
You already paid it?
That's done.
Where's the concern about having other developers contribute?
Well, that would be great, but we just pay.
But you just said we're under concern, I'm just trying to understand. Is that you don't want to be on this all by yourself?
Future infrastructure.
Future infrastructure. I fail to see, considering supply line issues, as you just stated, as Rocky Mountain has just stated, and a compromise here in a limited moratorium, we as residents, we deserve some consideration as well. And there is a lot of concern among a wide variety of perspectives in this town that we need to take a breath. This is a limited moratorium. We need to understand some things. We need to understand and communicate with the Water Conservancy. Better understand the relationship between Rocky Mountain Power. And I just think everybody's got to give on this. And I fail to see why 6 months that could be lifted earlier is a deal killer.
Caleb Spenlow. One thing I love about what's happened here is we've identified issues that were unseen before. And I love Jay Lee's comments about the ingenuity of Virgin during a time of crisis before. And I love that about the human spirit and that, given free reign, there's been great ingenuity that's been performed. And, I hope that the council can recognize property rights and understand that if we don't own our land and can do whatever we want with it, do we really even own it? And I think that's a great principle of this great union that we live in, is that life, liberty, and property. And I hope that we can help recognize individual property rights. And as our prayer dictated this morning, we can find resolution and compassion for one another. And allow everyone to have their own agency and right to choose. Thank you.
So I just wanted to make a comment on the zone change portion of this. I think you're coming at it from a flawed premise that a zone change would necessarily indicate higher impact on the infrastructure of water and power. I don't think that's necessarily always true. And because that's not always true, the zone changes should be removed in the moratorium.
Dr. Matzler? I hate to be up here, but I'm up here. The thing I see about a problem with this moratorium is we don't have enough information yet. We don't even know how much water we have yet. So we have 1,000 acre feet of water. So I'm wondering why we need to vote on something that we don't have enough information on. So the only thing we don't have information on stuff is how the district's going to treat the conversion of commercial uses and agricultural uses to equivalent residential connections. We're capped at 1,000 acre feet annually. And I was a little bit mistaken when I was saying in the last meeting, the 1997 agreement, it is purely a connection-based cap. But it also puts a cap that if there are certain types of uses that have a higher duty than 1 acre foot of water per connection, which it could, then there was a cap, they could cap it back on the acreage, annual acreage usage. But we've sat down with the district and pretty extensive spreadsheet, and you know, we know we're 581. Now, that is not taking some subdivisions that are on the agenda for tonight, those types of things, which will chip away at stuff. And so I do think we have a pretty good idea, but where our biggest problem is how they're going to convert things. Like I question about, I don't know, it's going to Zion White Bison. Zion White Bison. Because there are ways that should be probably looked at from a recreational or seasonal type use, probably, and be applied to that. It says under the things that the town engineer will determine what the conversion is. It has to be approved by the district. So I'm just saying, guys, let's come up with certain types of commercial uses and give it a denominator. Is it 0.5 million? Is it 0.34? Is it all of one connection? What is it? And that's what we're trying to figure out on the last of these things, so that we understand going forward with some of this stuff. Are we all the way up to 850? Or are we back in this at 700 or something like that? So that's really where the only unknown is still left to negotiate. That's going to be kind of a sit down, knock down horse trade with the district.
Keith, on that. When we did pay our impact fees, the town engineer went and used the state requirement for water usage for our use. He gave us our ERUs.
Yeah, there's some sort of calculation and
Yeah,
stuff.
Well, that's my first question.
So it was math based off the state.
I was just with the questions for that, what do you calculate to charge someone like Zion White Bison their impact fees? Because you can't say that it's a higher use than what you're calculating their impact fees off of.
But my point is, I think there's some math there that.
There is, I think there is some numerators that we can look to in state regs.
And our ERUs have already been calculated for what we've done.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff.
Don't
I-
worry. I needed to understand because it sounds to me like it's not an emergency. It sounds to me like we're out of water.
Well, no, it's not an emergency, we're out of water, but we are looking at, we have seen an accelerated use or depletion of our connections in recent years. And we're getting to that precipice where we gotta make a decision. And we go out and be aggressive and try to, I would use Jay's, we're gonna have to go out and swim with the sharks and try to buy some water rights and develop pump station, transmission line over to our tank to get more water there. Or we're gonna have to look at going into the pooling agreement. And one of the things in the pooling agreement is that we may have as a negotiating chip is these remaining connections. And how that will be utilized, because that has some very real value to the town and to the district. And so if we give away all those bargaining chips, then our negotiating power is considerably weakened for what may be a long-term fix to our water need.
I get that.
So I just want to say one thing based on what you were saying, when you were saying, well, we don't know where we are with the water connections. But the whole point of the moratorium is to find out where we are with the water connections. If we don't do a moratorium, we're continuing to just, people are walking in the door every day getting water connections. And so every single day the number changes. And what do we have? So just since our meeting last week, 11 more have walked out the door. And
Sure,
that's just in a few days.
Should we yell fire in the theater?
Well,
It's panic.
I understand that, but that's what's,
Okay, let me continue. Don't mind.
okay.
So my biggest concern is with this moratorium, it's gonna cost a lot of families a lot. And if you don't make your living off of development or land sales, then you don't really have any skin in the game. It's gonna hurt a lot of people. My family alone, there's 9 families that rely on our land sales. So if you tell all of anybody who wants to buy the property virgins that we're closed for business, then we're closed for business. No, this is my trend to thought, James. Let me finish. My brother-in-law, he made half of his living off the development last year. And I'm kind of tired of people vilifying developers. Developers come in all types. Nobody in this town would have a home if a developer wouldn't build a subdivision out here or over there. And I get a little emotional because this is super important. What's going on here? I feel like we're slamming the brakes. We should just pump them a little bit. I wrote some things down. So this moratorium, how does it affect residents who don't rely on development to provide for their families? Just like I said, they don't have a horse in the race. How does the moratorium affect residents who have already built and have an existing water hookup? Again, no consequences for those people. When somebody tells me they got to give a little, it's going to hurt a lot. So, and it's not just me, it's our entire family. So I just think a moratorium is a step too far. We're painting broad strokes over this thing when, if it's about water, why are we doing a moratorium on all building? Shouldn't it just be related to just the water? Shouldn't you limit that and not, instead of taking away all building? So, I just don't, I'm against it. I don't think that you have enough information yet. And, it's really gonna hurt if you do it. So I think it's a responsibility. Thank you.
I have a question to repeat. Mayor, Keith, you called it a pioneering agreement. I think it's similar to what I was thinking of for a payback agreement. It's a, and I haven't looked, I don't know if you call all what you do. I haven't even looked. Is it possible for the developer to front those costs for the infrastructure on the power? And the city create a payback area, and then when a new development comes in that utilizes that infrastructure, be the conduit for the payback to the developer, with a payback timeframe of 20 years. Is that possible that we can do that?
Yes, except for the fact that power is done within, is not within the town's purview, and what he's talking about is that Rocky Mountain Power, they're just the 900-pound gorilla, and they're like, take it or leave it, and I don't know, as a municipality, and those municipalities that I represent, we do reimbursement agreements, pioneering agreements.
Yeah.
We want to be first out and bear the burden to extend utilities and stuff to a place that's going to benefit a lot of other property owners. A municipality can and should do a reimbursement agreement so that any time adjacent property owners connected to the system, that they pay a pro rata fee. It's like an impact fee, but they're connected, they're getting the benefit of the improvement, but the cities don't usually do it for an extended period of time. Usually, like in Utah, I see 15 years.
Yeah.
It's pretty common.
Yeah, we used to do it for 20 years, but that's with our own infrastructure, and the concern I have is we're dealing with somebody else's infrastructure.
I can tell Mr. Westall, go get a pioneering agreement. $1.2 million to get a pioneering.
Well, that's why I thought, well, maybe if we created our own payback or pioneering agreement or somehow did that, I don't know if we could or not. I was just trying to think outside the box.
No, that's a very good question.
I just want to be really clear with your question there. Rocky Mountain Power does have their version of a pioneering agreement. And so like on the funds that we're extending now, we don't get any reimbursement for the vaults, the conduit, or the labor for all that being installed. And we don't have a traditional, what I call pioneering agreement, but there is a reimbursement agreement to a minor extent for like their pulling of the line, which we wrote in a check for the first 4 connections. So there is some type of participation, assuming that they connect in a timely manner and that we catch it and we ask for it. So there is a little bit of that going on with Rocky Mountain Power. It's just not done the way you would see it with a water system or a city.
Yeah.
The city usually does it a lot more straightforward, directly related to impact fees and all.
I was just trying to figure out a solution that addresses your problem.
James Keatsman, I'm a new resident of Bergen, but I'll speak on the power. I have 34 years in utility world in upstate New York. We do as residents have an impact on this. Because I'll speak, I know if that breaker fails at their nearest substation because of overloading this summer, the existing residents do have a skin in the game. We'll be out of power. You'll have nothing. And I know from looking at the transmission line coming over, that is not gonna supply future development. Yes, it takes time. They planned a new substation now. I'll guarantee you, if they have it on plans now and stuff ordered, you're looking at 2+ years away from being
They
completed.
said early 2025.
Yeah, that's if you're lucky. But we do have skin in the game as residents here. It's important. A moratorium, a limited moratorium for 6 months. Not a bad call, just to take a pause, take a break, take a look at things.
Matt Eakins, I appreciate the thought that's gone into tonight's discussion of the draft and the efforts from where we come earlier in the month. I think Jared painted a good picture that in terms of the questions that are being asked, Rocky Mountain was saying, hey, we've got concerns about power. Your partners in getting this fixed are the developers, not just White Bison, as Jared talked about in terms of vault and cost. studies that have been done, but collectively. But I also just want to emphasize that you have a process in place to address some of these concerns in terms of extent of power. If somebody comes in and wants a new subdivision for homes, they're gonna get their land use. Meaning they've got the zoning for their subdivision, they go and apply for their preliminary plat, once that's in place, then you have to go through the construction drawing, that's where the details come out. How many homes are going in, what's gonna be the demand on utilities? That developer goes out, gets the plans, work with those utility providers, those questions are asked and answered. You know what you're gonna have to be paying, what's available, what's not available, so that construction drawing phase before you get to a final plat and actually getting building permits and going through, that process gives you, in terms of your zoning administrator, town officials, town engineer, you're gonna be looking at those details. So there's another step in the process that provides not only input for the town to comment on these construction drawings, but utility providers to comment on what's being proposed. And that might, I think that's fair to say, the market itself will drive what's going on here. But this limited moratorium, while it's thoughtful, if it does include zone changes, you're taking away one of those key initial steps of partners that help solve these problems. And it goes beyond just power and the paper water. You know, these are issues you can look at. I heard discussions tonight about infrastructure in terms of capacity, tanks, replacing those. Those are partners can help pay for, you know. Collectively, Zion White Bison has paid $4 million between sewer, water, storm drain, power. There's looping, there's a lot of benefit. And that's money the town hasn't needed to pay. In terms of the urgency on the water rights, I've taken some time to go back and look at the 1997 agreement as well as the current regional agreement. From my opinion, there's not while there is, let's say we've got 419 connections, maybe another 200 will be taking up. That gives 200 additional connections as people coming in and evaluating. But you look at the agreement.
Which agreement?
The regional agreement that's being renegotiated right now, one of the primary points of, hey, what do we do? I would suggest Virgin can do both. It can keep its 1997 agreement with its remaining connections. Well, there's 419 or something different. Essentially, Article 6 or Section 6 allows the opt-in. The money has already been set aside in terms of you got to go back from 2006 and connect or calculate, back pay that money. You connect, pay your 5%. But you've also got to realize that that's a nice option contract. To step in and participate. I certainly understand it's being renegotiated and being considered, but this is a conservancy district that has an obligation to provide water within its district. I find it hard pressed to see a situation where the district's going to say there's no way any participating municipality can't come in after this year. The district still has to provide service in some form or fashion. So if the 1997 agreement between the district and Virgin was followed per its terms, there's 419 connections that can be defined, and I think those are all valid questions. To give up that water as part of in lieu of, I think that's giving up a lot, especially when it comes to water. It's as good as gold. The other comment is also looking at impact fees. There's a significant change going from the existing agreement and how the town water impact fees are paid versus what it would be changing to. I can go into detail maybe if there's additional questions, but also in the process of, okay, what if all the connections are used up? What's the standard process? Well, the town can say, we've got a couple of things. One is we can require anybody who wants to connect to the system. We have the facilities for it, meaning have enough storage and delivery. We just don't have the water rights. So if you want to connect to the system, bring the water, dedicate that, transfer it over to the conservancy district. There's also a whole host of conservancy practices or conservation practices that hasn't been discussed that the district is encouraging to look at. Something simple as secondary water or reuse of municipal water. That hasn't been part of the discussion. And I think there's not enough information if we're really looking at saying we're going to
put in a limited moratorium for water concerns. Well, it's not just one contract. There's a whole host of issues that should be considered and looked at and to justify. So ultimately, in terms of the facts that would support a compelling countervailing interest, I just don't think they're there. You can continue to provide water and functional contracts, whether it's opt-in and participate in the regional pooling agreement, or you can continue with your 1997 agreement. But I have significant concerns to give up those remaining connections. The way I read the agreement for the town from 1997 is you have up to 1,000 connections or no more than 1,000. It really is trying to say we're not going to allow 1 acre for the water per connection. But as things are trending, that number is shrinking. We're down to 0.59 per connection. So those are issues in terms of all valid questions, but to justify a moratorium and that strict implication, I have some significant reservations or facts there to support it when you have 2 contracts available, you have funds set aside. And if you look at the budget standpoint, approximately 60% of the town's budget is coming from what? Sales tax, transient hotel room tax. That's a significant source to the town. We're talking about individuals, but there has been a benefit to the town of this money and income, and that's helping solve problems in many different ways. But the town would be also financially impacted if you're saying, hey, let's stop for 6 months. Determine the time frame. If we're looking at the Rocky Mountain Power issue 2025 and substation, why is a 6-month moratorium to hear more about what Rocky Mountain Power may say or may do in terms of infrastructure really impact something maybe in 2025? Again, your fix is working with developers, not only like my client, but other developers. Will go in, they'll have the conversations. They may be able to provide the means, the studies, the resources to address those issues and deal with the power. So if we're dealing with something that's 2 years out, I stop it for 6 months when you're only stopping the ability to address and fix the problem.
You need budget. Okay. I'm gonna read these 2 comments that were sent in from people that couldn't come tonight, and then we'll take a break. So I want to get all the comments. And then, okay, so this was just from Wanda Leverett. He said, the ordinance is not available at this time, so my comment is on discussion for the January 15th. I agree that a 6-month moratorium is in order. If issues are addressed and resolved, the moratorium could be lifted sooner than 6 months. It is compelling that we get a handle on the water situation, whether we join the pooling agreement or not. There may be projections that exist regarding near-term, mid-term, and long-term needs, but I have not heard anyone reference them. What is the plan for residential development? What is the plan for commercial development? There are many unknown answers to questions. I raised several more questions in agenda item O later on that could also be asked now. I heard developers complaining about doing business with Virgin. Maybe a pause will also provide time to improve the current processes and procedures and address ordinance issues so that the process is smoother and there are fewer appeals. That was Wanda, and then this one last paragraph from John Ely, and then we're taking our break. He 100% supports this suggestion. Until we can ensure this town has adequate water, available water hookups, and electricity, as well as septic capacity, there should be no expansion of current projects and no additional developments. Once we have a handle on this very urgent and challenging issue, there needs to be a procedure to allocate each new hookup so we may progress responsibly. And I had something that I was going to say, and it's like, no idea, don't remember what it was. So we'll take a break. Jean and Leroy both would like a break. And so many other people in the audience. You know, are they, I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, we spent. Not stumble upon it.
Well, yeah. In the back, you went through. I need that.
And,
Having a good conversation. Having a respectful.
I brought a mark.
I can.
Oh.
Did you want me to email you those copies? I let it come off and down, and I have set up. Yeah. I have it set.
So we did. Yes.
All right. So I said this meeting was ending at 8 o'clock and it was 8:05 and we've only got to item A and item B. So I'm gonna call.
Got to item B.
Well, we're finishing item B right now. So I'm going to call for a vote and then we will get on with the rest of the agenda as fast as we can. So that's wrong one. So
You want
asking for a motion on item B.
to, I move on item B, the client.
Second.
Right? Start with Paul. Their motion is to deny the
Right, and I think that's the wrong way to go. I think we have sufficient concern with the water connections and where we're at. That it's going to be problematic for us. What I fear is, last month I heard 3 different numbers as to where we're at, and we've got more numbers coming in based on development. We don't have an idea of where we are at with connections. We could eventually find ourselves running out of water connections where we promise development people that are in the pipeline that they can connect. And I don't want to get into the position where we're having to tell somebody that had an expectation that they were gonna be allowed a connection, and then now they're unable to connect, or they have to come up with some other way to supply water, contrary to what their expectations were. Also, the pooling agreement, those connections that we have available are going to be key to our ability to negotiate on behalf of our citizens our entrance into that pooling agreement based upon, I heard figures based upon maybe 300 connections left, and with the new impact fee of what, $17,000, those are ranging from $3 to $5 million for us as town citizens in our negotiation with the pooling agreement. So in this case, I think moratorium is proper. I think it's necessary at this time. It's a limited moratorium with amendments that we have suggested that we still allow those in the pipeline to continue. And once we figure out where we are with respect to water connections, we can always then terminate the moratorium. So I'm going to vote no on this motion.
Gene?
Since we're gonna put our reasons behind it, I'll try not to talk too long, but I wrote down a lot of stuff. I think there's some really great comments. Thank you. Back in the elections, I don't think this is honest.
Push the button.
Back in the
Yeah,
elections
there you go.
this last year, this was one of the things that the commission has addressed a lot. And there were two ifs that were brought up. The first if was if we continue to have this decades-long drought. And if construction continues at the current rate, we have X number of years left of water. Those are two ifs that are constantly fluxing and moving, and that date moves out or back and forth depending on those conditions. One of my favorite movies is Apollo 13. I'm just going to tell you, one of my favorite movies is Apollo 13. Because the astronauts are stuck in space and they have to come up with a solution if they want to get home. And they can't say, we're just going to stop the spaceship. And then when we figure everything out, we're going to watch and see if we can come up with a solution. They have to be working on the solution. We know, according to the numbers tonight, which I want to point out, we thought we had around 300 water connections on the 12. Heath is already engaged with the Water Conservancy, and they've narrowed that down to a much more solid number of 581 connections. If we have used, just think about the reasoning here, if we have used 581 connections, that means we have about 419 connections left. On this ordinance, it states that 441 connections have occurred over the previous 25 years. Now, I know we have stuff that's in the pipeline, but even if we've called for 200 of these, even if these are laid out with 200 called for, it leaves 200 water connections. Water connection goes with the building permit, or if they purchase the water ahead of time, there is nothing new coming into the point that we need to be in a panic mode. The last subdivision, I just asked because I couldn't remember the date, the last subdivision that came in and showed interest in trying to do something was in July of this last year. That's 6 months ago. The economy has slowed. Things are stable. We have water available and it gives us time to look at it. I feel like the stop sign's a mile out and we're saying we need to stop the car now. No, we need to slow down and start looking at stuff. But as elected officials, our job, in my opinion, is to start thinking about solutions before we get to the panic situation. We are certainly not in the panic situation now. When it comes to power, I agree with what Jared's saying. I know that we've been looking for the past few months, talking with developers and working with Rocky Mountain Power about other solutions, such as diesel generators to run their properties until such time as the power is available. There are solutions, but to just say, we don't know what the solutions are, so we need to stop, seems highly irresponsible to me. I think in 6 days, we were able to get a much better view of what our water is. And this ordinance tonight, Ordinance O, would enable Heath to begin negotiating to see what our options are. Just because it says we have this intent to join the pooling agreement, that may not be the best answer. But the only way we're going to know is if we engage Heath with the Water Conservancy's attorneys to try and work out some sort of an agreement. I'm suggesting
instead of going into a knee-jerk reaction saying we stop everything, let's engage Heath and put some fire under him and say, hey, we want you to get to working on this and figure out what our true options are, what the best options are. How can we negotiate $5 million worth of water connections with the $200-something-thousand joinder fee? See what we can come up with. Maybe there's monies that can be put aside. Maybe we can keep those and still join the agreement at a later time. There's all kinds of options, but that's what we need to engage him to do, in my opinion. I just think it's too early. I think it's too early to be saying we need to stop all construction and stop all development, stop all zone changes, stop all CUPs. It feels like a knee-jerk reaction to. The last thing, as far as these agencies go, Rocky Mountain Power, Southwest Health, Utah DOT, FEMA, Army Corps of Engineers, all these agencies have to give their approval on any building. And it isn't something that we do as a town. When somebody comes to me and says, hey, I'm interested in building, I say, these are the steps you have to go through. You have to go to the Southwest Health Department and get approval from them for your sewer, or a letter saying you don't need to upgrade your sewer, or something. Otherwise, we can't progress. We can't move forward on your project. This goes with Rocky Mountain Power. With anything, the developer has to get that information compiled before the town will even consider it. I agree. I don't think it's the town's place to be messing around with Rocky Mountain Power. I understand we got a letter, but I think that Rocky Mountain Power can speak for itself, just like FEMA and the rest of these. Now, we do with the water. But again, I just feel like we have enough information at this point to know that we don't need a knee-jerk reaction to this. We can work at the same time. We can move forward at the same time that we're having Heath work on this for us. And for those reasons, I vote to deny this ordinance.
So seven, no vote or yes vote?
Because again, so the vote was for not to deny, so it's a yes vote.
So obviously, I disagree with Jean on much of this. Yes, this talks about the 581 that the Water Conservancy District believes is. Crystal and I spent an entire day on the phone with Water Conservancy District, going through all of the bills for years. I have a spreadsheet where I went through every single bill for years. We're looking at what they had as our water connections, and we have a different number. But they say 581. We have a different number that is a difference of 25. And with the stuff that he indicates here in one of the whereases, what we have in the pipeline is anywhere from another 150 to 200 connections that are in the pipeline right now on projects. So I am not panicking, as you're saying, when there's no need to panic. I don't think there's a need to panic either. I'm not panicking. I'm saying let's be rational and sit back and analyze. And that's all I'm asking for. And when we say that it's a limited moratorium and it's only for 6 months, this is not stopping everything dead and it's going to stay stopped. It is only for 6 months and can be lifted sooner. So my vote is no. I think we should go forward with a limited moratorium. But although I would potentially be open to removing the thing about zone changes. Okay, I voted, I said my vote is no. On the denial.
I vote yes on it, since I proposed it. I had a mentor, probably long ago before some of you were born, that told me, and this was information to me so that I could make right decisions. And he said that fear stagnates people. Faith motivates people. And what he meant by that is that a difference is that people who act on faith do something about it. And they reach out and find conclusions. People that have fear stop and stagnate. And I hate to say this, but I see this in a lot of our citizens in this town. And I apply this to the moratorium. We can have fear and stop everything. Or we can have faith and move forward. And I believe that's your answer.
Martin, okay, so,
So I assume that he said yes.
I said yes before I
Okay, I wanted to make sure.
that's why I kind of looked at my fifties. So. I do have some questions, and I know we are all allowed, everybody was allowed to ask questions, so before I state my facts. In the pipeline, we're all discussing the pipeline. That means anybody who has currently put in an application that has been approved. We're missing the fact that we're cutting our agenda short. And I noticed there are several zone change requests on our agenda. And I feel it's a disservice to those people not to let them have an opportunity to put in for those zone changes.
But maybe that's a point of clarification. I thought that they would be in the pipeline. Yeah, they would be in the pipeline.
So I felt like we were doing a disservice.
Yeah, this has no effect on those.
If they are approved in the future, they can pull building permits too.
So they're included in our pipeline.
Yeah, so we don't affect anybody that.
We needed that very,
If they've applied before the enactment.
right, I needed that very pointed clarification. Thank you so much for that clarification. The other thing is, I'm kind of Paul, I've had some heartburn and sleeping nights about this one, because my philosophy has always been, if I wanted to develop it, I should build it. If I wanted it to stop development, I should have bought it. And I kind of feel like if I'm going to buy something and develop it, and I can bring my own resources, such as maybe I have some water I could bring, then I should bring it to the table. But at the same time, I can also see the effect that we're gonna have our residents who already did buy it and brought what they could and can't find any more. We do have a process in place to put these through. And I do feel like a moratorium is a double-bladed sword. I feel like it's gonna affect everyone in different ways, and I know my vote is the ending vote of all of this. So I have one more pointed question. And it's a question I asked, I think I asked it in December when we brought up moratoriums. If this is about water connections, why aren't we putting it specifically on water connections? We're doing it on all buildings.
We're doing it on what?
All buildings. Why can't we just stop it with water connections?
I'm not sure I understand how.
Don't allow any more places with water connections, but still allow development for 6 months. That was just my question. And I could be going in and off way, but that is my question.
Okay,
I think that's getting the cart before the horse before the cart before the horse, excuse me. On how to do this, I've thought about that, and I heard Chuck ask the same question about. I think the problem is that at that point in time, the property owner would have vested rights, and it would be hard to put the genie back in the bottle.
before you finish, I want to go back to, you brought up the people that are on our agenda, all these zone changes. And Paul verified that, confirmed with Heath that they would not be prevented by this moratorium. But what has come into my head as we've been sitting here while you were still talking is, I want to make sure that this just means they get considered, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if this is not saying you guys were all approved, they still have to be considered.
You have to go through the process.
You've got to go through the process. They're just not going to be stopped from going through the process.
But if
Okay,
they're approved, they're
that's-
not stopped once, if Yeah,
Okay, I just want to be sure we were all clear.
that's still a good, yes, because they still have to get approval.
Okay, okay,
Okay,
so go on with what you were saying.
that's pretty, I got my questions answered, I'm gonna vote yes.
Okay. All
And
right,
that was a very difficult yes.
okay. So this ordinance, which was 2023-01, ordinance establishing temporary land use regulation, prohibiting the receipt, processing, and approval of all applications for development in Virgin Town, was denied based on a vote of 3-2. All right, so next on the,
Well, Mayor,
yes,
pursuant to your policy, you passed 8 o'clock. So are we going to continue or not? I'll make a motion to adjourn and continue the rest of the items to the next meeting.
We never need to do it either.
I'm going to second the motion and we'll vote on it and see whether we adjourn or we do not. So, Paul.
Aye.
Jean,
No.
me, yes, Leroy,
No,
okay,
I believe that we can work through these ordinances quickly. We can have comments because they've all been before,
okay,
public before.
and Misty.
That was going to be my reason for this as well. We had a long work meeting the other day that we discussed all of these items, so we should all be prepared to vote on those items.
All right, so we continue on. All right, so the next item on the agenda, as Leroy and Misty both said, we had a work meeting last Thursday, and we went through quite a bit of these things that are on this agenda, and we know where we're going with these. And we might be able to get through them pretty quickly. So I know that item C, which was the ordinance having to do with code enforcement. Gene has said that he wants to stay doing that, so therefore, this doesn't need to go forward, or else we just vote to deny.
Should I motion to table?
Exactly.
Oh, hold on.
Or is it? Actually, I don't even know if we should take it.
But it probably should be just a motion to deny.
Yeah.
What, Paul had something you want to say?
My question is, that's whether Gene goes forward or not, it's code enforcement, it doesn't affect his ability to go forward as a code enforcement officer, he would be one code enforcement.
We just what?
I don't see how Gene's decision to continue with code enforcement affects this ordinance.
This ordinance says that the law administrator is the code enforcement officer. If I read it right, is that what you're referring to?
Well, I don't see how it affects whether
Okay,
Gene is code enforcement officer or isn't. If he wants to continue, if he doesn't,
I see what you're saying. It doesn't matter
it
because
doesn't matter. It should stand on its own merits either way.
I see what you're saying.
I'd like
That
to-
this would not affect, what he's saying is this would not affect you continuing as zoning.
Can you weigh in on that? Is that?
Yeah, I
think it's.
I think I agree with Paul, it does stand on its own. I think that it can, if we were to approve the change, proposed changes, it kind of bifurcates and separates it from the zoning administrator. If we ever want to in the future, separate those responsibilities.
Do we need to add to the zoning administrator, current zoning administrator title, code compliance
No,
officer?
I don't want to make it, no. If, right now, what these changes are doing are simply saying that there is a separate code enforcement officer. Right now, we're having the zoning administrator do it, and we can continue to have the zoning administrator do it, but if we ever want to break it out in the future, this ordinance would separate.
Okay, as long as it As long as it does not prevent, Gene from continuing on his code enforcement. Okay, all right. Sorry, sorry, I didn't see.
So just some clarification for the planning commission, you guys are pulling this away from the planning commission, which is a land use ordinance change after 2 meetings. With which the land use authority, the planning commission discussed it. Is that what we're doing? Is that what this vote is going to indicate? Cool, because if it is, because if it is, then recommendation from the planning and zoning commission would be recommend denial of this ordinance. Because this is a land use ordinance change, not code enforcement change. This is changing to land, this is changing to wording of land use ordinance.
And you're saying that you could have the ability to have a public hearing recommended?
We have 1 public hearing on it. We're scheduled to have another public hearing at our next meeting. So we had 1 public hearing, we had 1 discussion in the planning commission, and we're scheduled to have another public hearing on this very ordinance at our next scheduled meeting.
Was this pushed back to you guys?
So we've never made an official recommendation.
So this shouldn't even be an argument.
Yeah.
So we can,
I didn't realize-
you just send it to the planning. We can keep it back.
I'm just questioning, I didn't know, well, they have the authority to pull it from the planning commission because we're not elected bodies. I just didn't know if 2 meetings was.
As long as we're clear that,
If they're actively, considering it, working on it, and taking public input, I don't think there's a reason to pull it back and make a decision, treat it as a.
so when they are sent, I just want to clarify this. I'm sorry, guys, I thought this was going to be a really fast ordinance, and here it is taking longer than I thought. Yeah, thanks, Kim. What is the proper role of planning commission when they get an ordinance that has been proposed that comes from the town council?
The planning commission is aware of that procedure. We write the ordinance, but it is our job to take public input.
Oh, yes, I don't have any
And
disagreement.
give you feedback on that ordinance. So while we won't be rewriting it, we have received.
They have to make a recommendation.
I have no.
And there's a difference between ordinances that originate with planning commission, they have to recommend it. That means a positive recommendation. They can recommend approval or denial.
That's fine. We're just talking about,
Thing is, unless we feel like they're swapped, the planning commission is not taking action on it intentionally or whatever, then I think the motion should be to table this for the means. It'll be on your next.
It'll be on our next agenda for public hearing.
That's the appropriate.
so we go,
I move to table this for 1 month to our next meeting. Second. In order for the, planning and zoning commission to provide us with the recommendation.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, next one. The ordinance amending, section 1622F, Casita Guest House. We had quite a long discussion on this one at the,
You also need public comment on this one too, before we move on it.
I'm sorry, what?
We still need to take public comment on it to see.
Okay. We already had public, there was hearings at the planning commission, a public hearing at the planning commission on all of these things that came from, I know what the agenda says. But if we're gonna get through this, then we need to not have no more public comment. To muddy the waters, it was heard at planning commission, we had our work meeting where we went through stuff. But the stuff on the casita, what we were left with, what I had in my notes is that we had said some of the wording needed to be changed. So should we table this to next month?
And I do have some amendments to it when we get to it.
Yes, that's why I'm asking, do we want to just table this to next month? This one, if we're gonna try to get to the rest of this agenda with these zoning changes that are coming up.
Just,
Didn't Sean volunteer to read?
Just a quick question.
I don't remember him saying that.
Okay.
point of information, I guess, is what I need to know. We work this over in the working meeting. If Paul's not feeling that we worked over well enough, I think we should put it for our next work meeting.
Okay.
I'd really like to
Okay.
bring this here and be done with it.
I'm ready to make the amendments that, my, two points I want to bring up. One is that it said public comment, so we need to put public comment. That's why I was calling for that, but irrespective, I'm ready to make my amendments,
Okay.
whether we continue or not, that's what's gonna take a few minutes, take some time to avoid through them. And then when we get to zone change, my concern with the zone changes, we never talked about that at the work meeting, so.
No, we did
That
not.
would be brand new material coming forward, and I do have concerns about not having the minutes of the planning board before us, before the zone changes come before us.
So what do you want to do? As long as it's gonna be something even that we're gonna find controversial, we're gonna dig in for how long.
I don't know how long, I have 4 or 5 amendments on it. If you want to wait till next month to do it, I'm all right with that too. Just saying, I have 5 amendments. I think I mentioned it at the work meeting, I had several amendments to it.
Yes, that's,
Those things to table until the next room meeting.
Oh, I prefer that if we're gonna do that, we ought to have a red line version so that everyone can see it, so it's just kind of orally explained.
And that's fine, and there's a lot of alternative motions depending on how we vote on one or other, and I can have that ready for next month.
Okay, so motion to table item B until the February board meeting.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
I'll save everybody's breath on this one, because I know it's gonna be the same exact thing. Hope it will verify that. I'm guessing you have a bunch of stuff you want to go on this.
Well, I thought we
We
decided
have
at the work
something
meeting.
down, it's gonna go to the work meeting.
Yeah,
Yes,
we're gonna spend some time up the next 2 work meetings to go
so
over.
it's same motion.
Same motion, table item E until next week.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So item F.
Is, okay, this is the setback one.
Yes, zoning, this was the zoning district setback where, the words of, RZ and RD were removed.
I wish you'd clarify setback, because every time this one and the next one come up, we all get confused.
Yes, I agree.
This should be. close.
This should be yes, this one should be fairly simple after we discussed it at the, work meeting. So you want to go ahead and make a motion?
I'll make a motion to, accept or to, is that the word?
Approve.
Approve, thank you, item F. As written.
Second,
So as we said to people in the room, all this was removing reference before we finished voting. That all we're doing is removing in the code to some zones that no longer exist in town. That's all this did. That referred, there was resort zone. Which is no longer a zone, and then RD, which we weren't even sure what that, I don't remember ever even seeing anything called RD. We're like, does it mean resort district? We don't even know what it means and why it was there. I've never been aware of us having code of a zone that was RD. So that's all that was. Okay, so, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so the next one is G.
I believe this was motion to deny. right?
Yes, the planning commission had recommended denial. This is an ordinance amending the maximum height of accessory buildings from 20 to 25 feet. And the planning commission had recommended that this be denied.
I move that we decline it.
I
I'd like
second.
to amend that. I'd like to amend that. if you'll accept it.
What's your amendment?
But still remove the 1 story. That was the original intent.
Under 25.
Everywhere else, we've removed the references to number of stories. We're concerned about the height of the building, not the interior.
you accept.
I accept.
Anyone going to second the motion?
But you said.
Did I? Okay, sorry. I'll second if I did.
Your amendment, please.
The amendment would be to put it back to 20 feet, but can keep the removal of the one-story order. So that it needs to be direct, no building which is accessory to one family, two family, three family, or four family dwelling shall be erected to a height greater than 20 feet.
All in favor?
Did we, do I?
Yeah, we said it, we had a second. It was me.
Aye.
Aye. Yes, I did say a second.
Okay.
I repeated myself. Okay, next is item H, which was oh, I have some comments to read from some people that weren't here. I'll make it fast.
That on H.
Yes, that was on H.
Madam Mayor,
What?
we were just this one on the table and got to. work
No.
on it.
No. This one about the terminal overlay? No. That's got a 180-day thing coming, yeah. So I just wanted to read this one comment that this is from Lauren Campbell, and he made the same comment that you did at our work meeting. He said, I'm unable to attend the town council meeting this week, but I would like to suppress, well, in a minute, I'll say the same thing as you. I would like to express my support for and concern with item E. Must have the old agenda, which proposes to eliminate Lulu 60.02 to remove the ability for future designations of short-term rentals and subdivisions. I am in support of this, but urge you to look carefully at the proposed language to remove all of 60.02, which includes sections E-H, which would also eliminate some of the requirements for current STR properties for permit standards, compliance, enforcement, and liability. So that was the same thing you were saying, where you didn't like the fact that if we remove the entire 60.02, that all the regulations or short-term laws that are already approved would go away. And we don't want that, and we all agreed that we didn't want that. So that's all we really discussed at the meeting, so at our work meeting. So any motion on item 8?
I move that we approve ordinance 2023. Deleting chapter 60.32.
In full? I would amend that motion to say, A, B, and C,
I'll accept that as my motion.
yeah,
Thank
and
you.
then D, E, F, G,
Yeah,
stay, and H. Can I second? If I amended, can I also second? I didn't think so.
I took that as a friendly amendment.
He took that as a. Okay, so then I will second Paul's motion.
Okay, wait a minute.
Paul, motion to approve. And then I amended to say only for items A, B, and C.
So
Sections
my
A.
motion only for those items.
Sections A, B, and C. of
A, B, and
that.
C.
I don't comment.
Okay,
I understand the intent. I said in the work meeting that I'm sensitive to the idea of looking at, figuring out a way to work on it. In the past, the commission and myself personally have come under heat for working on ordinances that have other references in many other chapters. And every chapter references this 60.02.
yes,
I think if we're gonna do this right, we should deny this or table it. Put it back to the worst meeting and fix it, or deny it completely and start fresh. I don't care, but I feel like we're gonna leave half the ordinances hanging that rely and work with this.
so then,
I know there's a time.
what?
I know there's a time limit on
No,
it.
that was what I was gonna say, is he made a motion, I seconded, his motion was to approve. So that just sounds like you just want to vote no.
I'm trying to explain why, so that you understand.
Yeah.
I'm not against working on it, I'm just saying, you gotta figure out, and if you approve this, you're leaving a bunch of ordinances hanging in other chapters that reference it and reference short-term rentals that makes the job of the zoning administrator and the council and the commission
I
in
understand.
limbo.
I understand. Good. Okay. So. We'll take a vote. Paul,
Okay,
Jean? No. Me, yes. Leroy,
No,
Misty.
No, do you want a bubble or just?
Oh, if you want to give us your reason, that's fine.
I would like to give it this something.
Okay.
I don't seriously believe in we did have this, and I believe in our meeting, we actually discuss sending it back and having findings and review it.
Which
would you
is-
can make a motion?
Which we can make a motion to do that. I just wanted this voted on because it's the time frame, because there was a time limit, and as I said in the work meeting, I didn't care if it failed. I just wanted a vote to take place before the time limit ran, and if we bring back this issue with caps, fine with me.
Since we have the commission here, can we just ask them to, well, ask them to look at this?
No?
Ron was actually written. She said he has something written. Or,
Ron, what?
Ron's already.
Okay, all right.
so
Okay.
before we get to item I would make a motion that we move item O up before item
Okay. I would second that.
I. That's water bill and agreement.
Okay. All right.
So the ordinance, there's a motion to approve it.
It failed.
It failed.
It failed. The vote was 3-2. Yes, I should have reviewed, like I did the others, to say that there was an ordinance and the vote was 3-2, so it failed. I should have said that. Okay. So you have made a motion to move O before item I,
Yes.
and I just seconded. So, all in favor? Aye. Okay, so we will talk about item O, which is the resolution for the water pooling agreement. So, Keith, you wanted to explain this?
Well, under the current, regional water supply agreement, APA approved agreement, there is a section that identifies the process for, some municipality joining. And, one of the things that you have to do is to adopt a resolution indicating the municipality's interest, desire to join and become a party to the pooling agreement. Doesn't mean that we automatically become, and requires the approval of the Washington County Water Consistency Board of Directors. Obviously, it is accomplished through an addendum to the agreement. That is going to obviously require some negotiation, but this is the starting point to the process. If they know that the current governing body of the town desires to pursue joinder, then they will.
So this is just a resolution to begin the negotiations and approach. I want to make sure I understand just what this is.
if they approve this, and we don't like the conditions, can we just step back and?
Yes. Yes, if they're not contractually obligated. It's not contractually obligated. The ultimately signing a addendum to the joint agreement, joining, that would contractually obligate. If we don't like the terms, we don't have to.
Good.
So in the meantime, where we had talked about if we had done a moratorium, all the things we were going to analyze about how much for residential, how much for commercial, all that, we can still look at in the meantime while we wait out what these guys say. And then what I'm thinking is I want to have, a backup plan in case they deny and say, no, you're not joining the water pooling agreement, we reject your application, I want a backup plan in place. So that's,
I agree.
okay,
I think this should, I think the whole idea is saying, go.
right, you come back with
Give
an
us
option.
information, give us information so we know what we're.
But in the meantime, we need to work on, if we're denied, we need our stuff, we need to be ready. If we're denied by the water conservancy.
Yeah, 'cause that's.
Correct.
Okay. All right, so,
You are.
oh, you have something to say?
I'm gonna move that we accept public comment on this, since this is new business and we have not yet heard public comment on this item.
Okay, all right. Any public comment on this resolution? For us to explore, further with the Water Conservancy District about.
And I know we have
Joining the water.
written comments,
Yes,
but,
thank you for reminding me.
I will just say, I accept those written comments, but I don't think we have to read them in until we include them with the minutes, am I right? Keith?
That's correct.
Darlene has something to say.
This is on behalf of someone who's unable to make the meeting, April McMahon. Employed by the state of Utah as water commissioner for 3 distribution systems, Cedar City, Heroin, and Milford. I've been thinking about this issue very carefully. I know that the value of water in Cedar City is between $11 and $12 per acre foot. I assume the value is more than that in Washington County. From the Washington County Water Conservancy District 2022 Impact Fee Facilities Plan and Impact Fee Analysis, the impact fee for a 1/4-inch residential service is proposed to be $14,000. Non-residential fees are more. The resolution states that the town has used slightly more than 600 hookups, but they do not know how many hookups are in the pipeline or approval process. Virgin Town should know how many hookups have been approved beyond the 600. But for estimating purposes, let's just say we have 350 hookups remaining. The value to the Conservancy District is at least $4.9 million. We also know from this study that the Water Conservancy has no excess water. The 2 planned projects will provide just under 2,000 acre feet in 2025 and 26, enough water for about 2,000 households. The study indicates that new water supplies in Washington County are extremely scarce, and those that are available, are expensive to develop. Also, without the Lake Powell pipeline, the impact fees could more than double the values that were calculated in the study table 13. On the water rights website, as of the end of 2021, 2022 data was not available. Virgin Town has about 470 ERCs and used 200 acre feet of metered water. Consider the comparison to 1997, when the town had 137 ERCs and used 54.4 acre feet. In 24 years, the increase of hookup is 333 with an increase of 145 acre feet. Virgin Town is about 0.366% of the population of Washington County. If Virgin Town gives back the 350 acre feet of water to the pool, that is 17% of 2 planned water improvement projects. Main question: will the Conservancy District guarantee that Virgin Town will get at least our remaining hookups? Washington County Water Conservancy District does not seem to have the power to limit growth, and municipalities do not seem to be willing to limit growth based on the availability of water. Are we assuming that we will have unlimited water available for unlimited growth within the pooling agreement? Recently, an Arizona town of 2,000 homes was cut off of Scottsdale water supply. They raise the impact fees according to the analysis.
I'm thinking. There's something Darlene said in that letter that she read from April. It's one of these deals came in my head, now it's gone, like, oh, I wanna bring that up. Like, I don't wanna vote on this until I remember what it was. Can I see that? It'll jog my memory. Oh, it was on your phone, I'm sorry, I didn't know that, I thought it was a printed copy. See if this will jog. Ah, yes, okay. I remember now. One of the things that April mentioned, that's mentioned by April in this, which is one of the things that has concerned me, is that when we mentioned about joining the water pooling agreement, that people might come away with some belief that that means there's unlimited water. If we join the water pooling agreement when there is not unlimited water. And I had the study that the Water Conservancy District handed out at one of our meetings in September. And I talked about it in our newsletter, and I have a copy in the town hall, and I said that this was there for everyone to read. And so far, Crystal told me one person has come in and looked at this stuff, one person. And this study shows that the Water Conservancy District said that by end of 2023, that they will be out of any more water for development. That's what they said.
Based on a timeline of projects coming online.
Correct, and they-
Temporary period. As soon as other projects come online, then they'll be past the.
Correct, they have allocated more water based on development projects that have been approved. They've allocated more water than they actually have. And so one of my concerns is if we give up our water connections and go into the water pooling agreement, and I could be putting the cart before the horse, because we still haven't even heard from them as to whether or not they're going to accept our proposal. I am just concerned that we could potentially hand over our water connections, and then all these other projects that are already in line before any more projects come along from Virgin, and there goes the connections that we have. That's one of the things I worry about. So I just want to say, I have had, when we first talked about this, I was in favor of us joining the water pooling agreement. I now have reservations, but I will vote in favor of this for us to proceed and investigate and negotiate with them and see what we come up with. But I do have my reservations. I just want to make that clear.
Is this a public hearing?
No,
Not really.
I want to add that I agree with the mayor. I think that's what we're asking you to do, is go and find us the best option, because it may not be. We just want to see what our options are, and if this is the way that we start that, then.
So unfortunately, we accepted.
We accepted.
Yes.
I just don't like it.
Okay, to be allowed for the public.
Okay, okay, Jared, what do you say?
I will attempt to make this brief. To your point, Mayor, I think that's what you're saying is a very valid concern. So I have a project that had a will serve letter from the Cotton Well, which is the same source for Virgin. And this project south of Leeds in the unincorporated county. And my will serve letter lapsed because we're working on sewer. And so our assumption was as soon as we solve the sewer, we'd come back in and re-get our will serve letter. But they're reserving the connections that on your current contract here, as well as other connections that have been spoken for in Toberville and Laverton. So here I have this project, I have final engineering drawing, and we're so excited to get it built, and now we have to wait until these infrastructure projects are completed. So they're doing water line from the wastewater treatment facility south of Quail Lake, there by I think everybody's probably seen those water tanks and all that. And so that's just what we deal with in development is now we're on pause. We have a self-imposed moratorium, I guess. Because they're reserving the connections for here and other places that you guys have them contracted. And so we won't be able to do anything until those water projects are complete. And that's just how it works in the development world. And I would say as it relates to the 200 to 300 connections that are available here, I know as a developer, I would love it if it was 1,000 connections and there was a lot of runway, but if those connections are all spoken for over the next 2 years, 3 years, 6 months, whatever it is, that's like normal. Like when they run out of connections, they run out of connections, and then you have to wait for there's the paper water right, which would be solved by getting into the pooling agreement. But that wouldn't solve the wet water right and the conservancy's district to be able to deliver it. And so those are two issues that both have to be worked through and figured out. And to me, if the connections get taken up, and we have to wait till the conservancy district line and those infrastructure projects, phase 1, they've even ordered the material, but phase 2, they're just working on the engineering. So we're a ways out for that wet water to be able to be increased beyond 1,000 connections today as it is.
Okay, thank you. All right. Yes, yes, we're at 9 o'clock now.
Jay Lee, I was just thinking, if you decide to go with this water pulling agreement, you might as well mix that moratorium you just did, because you've taken care of the water issues.
Well, the moratorium failed, so
Moratorium, the 6-month moratorium.
it failed.
Yeah, because the whole moratorium is about water. And if you go with this, you've taken care of the water issue, so you can just do away with that moratorium.
No, I disagree with that because there's no guarantee that how much water we're gonna get.
Maybe you need to,
Okay, so let's vote on it.
another thing, maybe you need to put a 6-month moratorium on the water pulling agreement with everything else.
Okay, let's vote.
We don't have a motion, but
I thought we had a motion in a
No.
second.
We don't have a motion to do. I move for approval of resolution 2023, whatever number that is, for the water pooling agreement.
Okay. All in favor?
Wait, a second.
Jean. I don't know that we have to do a roll call vote on this, so all in favor?
Can I ask Keith the question?
Sure.
Keith, in your negotiations, can you make sure that the irrigation water, they won't touch that at all? We have some citizens that have contacted me that have really good rights to the irrigation water and they don't want to lose that. Okay, and if he'll do that, then I will vote yes.
Okay. I'll say one more time, all in favor?
Aye.
Now, what are we going to do about the rest of this agenda? It is 9 o'clock, we've been here 3 hours. We're on I, J, K, L, M, N.
And based on the logic for the denial, my last motion will work because we discussed the other ones at the work session. We haven't discussed.
And we have not discussed any of these at the work meeting. That is true.
And I would like to get the minutes of the planning board and have a chance to look at those.
You're talking about zone changes?
For the zone changes. I'd like to see the minutes for all of them. I do have the minutes, I think, for Al, but I didn't get a chance to look at the minutes today.
Now, I will say that in our work meeting on item J, I have a note that we had agreed we were gonna be sending that back to planning and zoning. That's what my notes show from our work meeting.
Yes.
And if so, then we can at least vote on that, send it back to planning and zoning. We can get that out of the way. But I.
I move for moving item J up before item I.
Second.
Great, maybe not.
I know. I feel sorry for you, Crystal, I'm
Okay.
sorry. She has a migraine, and that's why we're trying to get out here. So we're moving, Paul made a motion to move J before I and Jean seconded. Okay, so I will take a motion then on item J.
Aye. We have both.
Oh, sorry, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So, item J.
So we table,
We motion to move this back to.
fine,
Table and send back to.
Send it back to planning.
second.
Okay, all in favor?
I,
Aye. Okay. So. Looking at item I. You had said at the last meeting that you were gonna go and meet with Keith and you were going to talk to him, so we haven't heard anything that came back from Keith. And then,
Let's get into it and we'll make a motion, we can move forward. I promise you will be happy.
okay,
So,
we'll see.
okay, one of the problems with ordinances that has been lingering for a very, very long time is that the short-term rental subdivision, chapter 60.02, chapter 60 in general, was written very specifically around 5 acre subdivisions. There have been troubles trying to classify what that means when you're not dwelling, or if you're not in a subdivision, because we've never written anything up for it. So I started working with Keith on a way to distinguish what the differences are. It's in process, so I'm gonna table it, or I'm gonna motion to table this back to the work meeting. And
You're
hopefully
right,
have
I'm
more
happy.
information.
I second your motion. All in favor?
I,
Right.
I motion that we adjourn and then move all the items to next month's meeting.
we're gonna discuss the rest of these at the work meeting then.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah, big part of the work meeting, but then we'll take action at our next regular meeting.
Okay.
I'll give us a chance to look at the minutes and resolve whatever issues we have at the work session.
I second that.
Okay, all in favor,
I have concerns with this, we put these guys off in December, putting them off again in January.
3 months.
I don't think that's the right move. We should have had plenty of time to look at this and know that these zone changes would come in.
They were a planning board.
November, handed up to our agenda on
December. And I already had a full agenda. Before those ever came to us, I already had a full agenda for
Sort of
December.
like at least a roll call.
That's fine, and we didn't have a chance to talk, we didn't talk about the work session, so that's why I thought they were brand new, because they're listed as new business, not old business.
Well, they weren't on the agenda in December.
Okay. well,
That's
so
why
they-
they're.
so it's brand new business, okay.
But
So-
in turn, were we expecting to resume the time limit? Is this fall under the same category?
Well,
How we expect this done in a timely manner, our ordinances that we suggest, I think this is the same.
But this would be the first time.
but
it's
this
been
is
on
the
our
first
agenda.
time it's been on our agenda.
Okay.
So I would say, if you're calling for a vote. we will-
So if we put this on our work meeting, then we have. The only additional stuff that would come on our work meeting agenda. Well, no, that's not true. I have other stuff that has nothing to do with what comes from planning. We have many things that we want to put on our work agenda,
But this
but
would
this
be
could be
new.
top of the list.
This would be old business, will be up front of the next.
Right, it would
agenda.
be at the top of the agenda. Okay, so
Aye,
we got a motion and a second?
we already did. yeah.
Yes.
And I'm asking-
Okay, you said no.
I just am asking for a roll call.
Okay,
Aye.
No.
yes.
No,
Yes.
All right. So now, Paul, make your motion.
Oh. Oh, that's what was motion.
Motion. All in favor? Okay.
I thought I had combined. That's what.
Gonna be all about it.
Sorry, you want to speak.